All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Doctor Is In. We have lots of new people, and welcome. Welcome from, many countries. I'm not sure if we have anyone from Asia this time, but that's all right. So, just a couple housekeeping notes. Keep your video off and your microphone muted for this interview. It's being recorded and will be on YouTube. So we're going to try to avoid cameo appearances. Maybe you want to avoid that, or maybe you would like to be a star. But this first part, the interview between Tina and I, is recorded, and then later on I'll turn off the recording to ensure your privacy, security, and so you will so then you'll feel more comfortable unmuting yourself and asking your question. And so just hold on. For questions, you may type into the chat box your question, or you can ask audio or turn on your video. It would be great to see you. But for now, we're going to just have a conversation with Tina and I. But before we get into this, because we are talking about working with transgender population in the sex trade. And so a couple of other housekeeping notes about terminology. And so transgender is when we say transgender man is someone who is born female and transitions to male. And then a transgender female is someone who is born male and transitions to female. So that's what we're talking about. We're not talking about intersex, and it's not to be confused with sexual orientation. Sexual orientation has to do with the sex to whom you are sexually and romantically interested in. So there's gay, a lesbian, which is men attracted to men, and women attracted to women. We're talking about your gender identity. This is also, I still hear the term transvestite used a bit. That's an old term that's still a thing, and it really has to do more with someone dressing up in the clothes that are more fit for that particular gender identity. But it doesn't really mean that they're transgender. I mean, of course, male to female, men will dress as a female, but that's different than being transvestite. Usually it's having a sexual arousal about wearing female clothes or something like that, but has nothing to do, it doesn't necessarily mean that they identify as the person they're dressing up as. So, and also because we're discussing prostitution, human trafficking, sexual exploitation, the point here is not to get into those definitions. We recognize that there's a spectrum of exploitation, but what we're talking about today is meeting the person where they are. We're talking about meeting people who want to exit, meeting people who need some extra help. So that's what we're dealing with today. We're not talking about, what's prostitution and what's sex trafficking. We're just meeting the person where they are. So without further ado, I will introduce Tina. Tina works with an organization in a city in Italy. And so please, why don't you take it from there a little bit? Just tell us a little bit about you, your role, where you work, who you work for. Please take it.
Thank you. It's good to be here. And so, even though I work in Italy, I'm actually Finnish. And at the moment, I'm in Finland for the time being. For the past 5 years, I've been working in a central Italian city of about 100,000 people, and working there with Operation Mobilization, so a missions organization that's maybe some of you know for the ship that we have that travels the world. But we actually have work in over 100 countries. And the aim of OM, so OM for short, for Operation Mobilization, is a non-denominational organization, and our vision is basically to see the gospel advance amongst the least reached. But then that means very different things depending on the context. And so we have work varying from church planting and discipleship with people to doing relief and development work, and then ministries of social justice. And that's how then the work that I've been doing also comes in. So our work is then amongst victims of sex trafficking and sexual exploitation. I'm 33 years old, and I'm a social worker training. So yeah, a little bit of my background.
Great. And so describe sort of the project that you're working there in Italy. Is this an outreach style project, or you do aftercare, or describe a little bit more on the ground about how you're working with transgender in Italy.
And so our ministry, reaches out to transgender, and in our case, specifically Brazilians. So in our area, we have a large community of Brazilian transgender, but then we also work actually with Nigerian women. But we indeed started out with outreach, so roughly 5 years ago now, and then have developed it from there. So then we do follow-up. We desire, of course, to see individuals exit prostitution. And that though means that, we basically walk alongside these individuals, meeting their needs where they are. And because people, have very different situations. Some have been in Italy for over 15 years, while others have arrived really recently. The needs the needs vary. And so then just at their pace, we try and assist them in the ways that we can. We are a small organization or a small team. And hence, of course, we keep on developing our work to try and be able to build to better always meet the needs. But we, work with people so they could find other work, get training in the meanwhile. And with the transgender, though, the work has mainly focused on the outreach and then maintaining those contacts through outreach, but also individual meetings where possible, mainly assisting in practical ways and looking for ways to find ways so people could start afresh and do something else.
Sure. So is it street-based outreach, or are there brothels, or is it massage parlors, or is it karaoke bars? Explain, give us a picture of what that milieu looks like where you work.
Yes, so it's street outreach. And in Italy, actually, I think roughly 65% of people in prostitution work on the streets. And so that is how we also came to meet and engage with the transgender, because during the time that we would go out on the afternoon, during daytime, we would have the Nigerian women in one part of the city, and then in another part of the city, the transgender. And out of the sheer need that we saw, we started to converse and to get to know these individuals, and ever since then kept that up.
So this is something that your team evolved into. You were originally doing outreach to women in prostitution, and then saw like the need to reach out to the transgender women. Is that right?
Yes, we weren't actually we didn't know of the actually creating the big number of people that are on the street that are specifically transgender.
Yeah. And so then now you have a team that's dedicated to working with the transgender, or you're working with both women and the transgender women?
Yeah. So our team, we work with both, but we do have some division of labor, if you may call it that. So the team is actually currently based all on volunteers. So I was the only full-time worker. And then, it's volunteers who bring it forward. And they, though most of us do outreach, we do then take on a bit different tasks depending on our strengths. So whether some focus them more on the case management, counseling, who are trained for that, and others may be more organizing indeed the outreach, the practicalities of that, the follow-up, like not with the transgender, but with the women. Then we've had more women exit, and hence then the follow-up and what comes with that. Some individuals are more focused on that, but
sure. So going back to the milieu, so you said most of the prostitution, for all kinds of prostitution, right? It's mostly street, right? For men, women, transgender, whatever. And so is it legal or is it tolerated, or what's sort of the legality of prostitution there?
So it's legal, but of course, yeah, human trafficking is not. And so even though there are many cases of human trafficking within who is in street prostitution, not much is done about that. And so it's in this sense very tolerated. But when it comes to the transgender, they are an even more marginalized group within the already marginalized people in prostitution. And they are subject to more violence, more abuse as a subgroup. And so it's they as a group face, if I may say, more difficulty in terms of exiting and coming out of prostitution than compared to the women, if I generalize a bit here.
Yeah. So let's talk more about the demographics about the transgender women, and why is it more difficult, or why is it more violent? And well, you said they are mostly Brazilian. The people that you work with, are most of the transgender there in that city from Brazil or South America? Or give us, paint a broader picture about what this demographic looks like.
Yeah, who we're looking at.
Yeah.
So yeah, in our case, they're actually all Brazilian from a few different areas and places, but clearly from certain spots in Brazil. And actually, our area, we've received Brazilian transgender there, I don't know, for over 20 years. So it's been like a hot spot, for a longer time, and continues to be so. And we talk about people, like I mentioned earlier, some have been there, way over 15 years. Others have arrived very recently. So therefore also age varies from early 20s to people in their 50s. And then that means that, people also health-wise find themselves in really different situations. So some are unfortunately already very, struggle greatly because of health issues. Substance abuse is very present amongst many. And then with that comes, obviously a series
Sure.
of other problematics. And most are undocumented. And this then, creates another barrier to the exiting. But even though there are many, generally in Europe, we may have many people from Latin America that are transgender, but in our case, all Brazilians. So of course, then what happens is that, through contacts, other people come where they already know some people.
So if they're coming into these, a lot of undocumented, would you say that a lot of them, if they don't fit the exact definition of trafficking, would you say they come under the auspices of being exploited or being pimped or something or under the control because they've owed money in order to get to Italy or to Europe in general? Are they under this, would you say most of them are under that kind of specter of exploitation?
Yes, I think all come in with the debt. So they have been trafficked in this sense. So already when they're recruited in Brazil, often perhaps by other transgender Brazilians who have a past or perhaps are currently still in prostitution. In any case, using manipulation, deceit, people are recruited. And so when you hear then the stories, you notice there are elements of trafficking in any case, even if people come on purpose to to make money through prostitution. But this doesn't mean that not everyone in Brazil has actually necessarily been involved in prostitution previously. So that also depends and varies. But many come because of the need to escape their situation in Brazil. So whether it's because of family reasons or generally the risk that they face because of being transgender. And so people just come looking for a better future, but often with false hopes in terms of how much they would make, how it
Yep.
would really be practically. So there's a lot of exploitation when it comes to also then having to pay rent, blackmailing to pay higher rent, to pay on behalf of others. So for any reasons, they just have to make up for, pay for made up costs as well.
And so is that made more difficult because of discrimination of transgender, or is it discrimination because they're from South America, or is it a combination of everything? What makes that more difficult?
Perhaps overall due to their vulnerability of being in a vulnerable position.
Okay.
And
you mean I'm sorry to interrupt, but like an economic vulnerability, or sort of an immigration vulnerability, or I would just want to tease out what's that vulnerable part?
Coming to a country where you don't know people, where you don't know the language. After the, I don't know, first 3 months losing your legal right to be there. And just not knowing your rights, the way to move around.
Sure.
And so not only because they're transgender, but that plays into it. That's a part of it. Because then there's it's difficult to find anything else to do, other work, and hence they fall victim of being of this background. Even if that's not the first reason. Yeah.
Sure. So something I also want to talk about, a little bit of a shift. So you work with women and, Nigerian women and specifically, but, what are the differences between working with a transgender woman in prostitution versus someone who's a woman? I mean, are there, other than the vulnerabilities, are there other facets about them or their life or their presentation that make it more difficult or challenging or easier? Or can you explain the differences between the two?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in our experience, it's, on surface level, there isn't any difference. So we approach anyone in the same way, just as people, as we are. But then once you get to know people more and once the conversations become deeper, there are differences and nuances and things that we, and in our case, we are all women in our outreach team. So we are aware of certain factors. So as a woman, I cannot relate to a transgender as a woman, which I can to a woman that I'm speaking to on the street. So that's a difference. I can pretend to understand certain life issues because it's just a different situation. That doesn't mean that we don't begin to understand and we're empathetic, and it's been a great privilege to just learn so much actually from them. But that makes a difference, and also then because of their life story, of the things that they've faced due to their gender identity, they just carry that baggage or that shaped them. That shaped them. Yep. And their worldview is linked to who they are as a transgender person. And so I speak about the rejection they faced, maybe, from their parents, their family, just the abuse and the violence they've been subjected to because they are transgender, and those kind of issues that may not be in the same way present in the life story of the women that we meet. Of course, anyone that's in prostitution has faced abuse and violence, no doubt, but it's different because it's linked directly to who they are, who their gender identity, what is their gender identity.
Sure.
So it's much more personal in a way.
Sure.
And then overall, when it comes to maybe life aspirations, there are differences because women may desire to have a husband and children. Many of the people we meet, they state this as a dream, but then that's different. In someone's case was transgender. So just overall, the bigger life issues to some extent differ, and that's fine. That's also fine.
Well, it becomes very complicated. And so if someone in this position wants to exit, you're always offering, the invitation, and helping anyone, whether they choose to or not. But that kind of background also adds to the complexity and difficulty barriers to exiting, because then what is next, or what do you want, or what are their dreams?
And actually, really strongly linked to this point is the fact that they just have lesser options because of the discrimination they face. So there aren't, a woman, even though they come from a difficult background, they blend in with the mainstream society. A transgender person, at least in Italy, in her area, is labeled to be in prostitution if you're transgender, basically. So it's very difficult then to live a so-called normal life, or to even find work, because many people are just so prejudiced. And that's already then fear that they have. They don't want to maybe try something that where they're scared of being rejected, because people, though they are tolerated in Italy, but still there's a big level of just this, I don't know, even it's discrimination, but it goes beyond that, because people don't accept you as you are. And so it's easier to then stick to what stay in the small circle of people that and not put yourself out there, understandably.
I'm going to change topic just a little bit, because I'm a doctor, and so I'm interested in some of the health aspects. And so in general, there's a lot of health risks associated with prostitution, a lot of violence and things like that. But then there's also the health issues regarding access to hormones or other gender affirming things that they want to do. And so how, as immigrants and sometimes illegal, do you find that they're often exploring non-traditional ways of meeting their healthcare needs? Or do you find a lot of questions here? Sorry, or do you find that their health problems are more complicated than other women in that milieu? And how do they meet those needs? Is it more difficult, or
To some extent, yes. Many order hormones actually from abroad, being outside of the healthcare plans locally. But for like emergency healthcare, they do have anyone, whether you have documents or not, you have the right for that.
Okay.
But many have contracted HIV, and there are more complicated issues there. And then that also comes to the aftercare. There are more things to consider because of hormones, surgeries perhaps that people want to do, or I've known of people who wanted to remove the silicones that they've placed and have put in their cheeks and things like this. And so there are more complicated.
So if they wanted things like that, being outside of the health system is more problematic.
It means it's financially them more burdensome. And also for them, many of them are saving perhaps money to have certain surgeries done. Some of them maybe fly back to their home countries, where they then more easily have access to certain services and may have surgeries done there. But others save up and then down the line dream to do things in Italy also. Because obviously in the private privately there are many doctors.
So even though it's legal, they're not necessarily registered and have access to public health, only for emergencies.
So some are and some aren't.
Depends. So prostitution is legal, but we find that in lots of places that many of the people in that situation are not actually registered and do not actually get the benefits, even though it's legal. in that situation.
And if I may maybe clarify here, it's and this is one difference also then to working perhaps with the Brazilians compared to, for example, the Nigerians. The Nigerians often are asylum seekers, and then this is the route, the way they can get their residence permits done. Whereas for Brazilian, they don't have legal basis in the same way to for example, seek asylum. And if they're not recognized as a victim of trafficking, then makes it harder to find refuge and to stay legally in the country. So this is a big difference compared to the two groups.
Yeah. Now, I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions from our guests, but I want to bring up at least one more thing. And so if people have a particular heart to reach out and explore what it means to do a similar outreach work among transgender. Maybe people are already doing outreach with women or boys or other people, and this is why I want to explore this particular dimension. Or maybe they haven't started anything and think, oh, well, I want to go where there's fewer people. Because you and I, when we have our meetings and we talk, that we desperately need more people who are willing to reach out to this group and offer assistance and do outreach, because it is different and it is more challenging. And so what would you say, or, do you have any advice or some remarks about or recommendations for people kind of thinking about this kind of work?
I would, of course, encourage it, because I don't think it's something that, it should be seen as so different compared to reaching out to anyone else in prostitution. Because that's what we talk about, wanting to help people who are, in situations of exploitation. And so there are I think there are multiple ways of getting involved. And obviously, if locally there's an NGO who is already working amongst the transgender, this could be a way to start to explore and understand better what can be done through volunteering, if the NGO accept that. But then also, I know in some cases people, depending on their gifting, like over distance, one could get involved in helping, I don't know, in communications, in these kind of support background works that all ministries do anyway. And often small teams often are also looking for people through awareness raising. Whether there is prostitution in one's area or not, one can always still raise awareness about what's going on, do fundraising, and just read up also. There are some, faith-based books about this, but then, there is a variety of literature out there and stories. And we can also surely recommend if anyone would be interested in having some recommendations. And then also, like just looking, it links to the discrimination, how it's hard to find work. We really would need more people that can actually be kind of ambassadors, go and speak with employers to see if they would hire or offer a work placement, internships, training opportunities. And not because people should be seen as charity cases, no, but to just kind of open the way, because it is so difficult.
Yeah, and reduce that discrimination, not be afraid to hire someone because they're transgender, and just to break down those barriers to, hey, these are people and they're highly qualified, they can do work. And but I like how you put that about being ambassadors and just helping to not only empower, but sort of help be the first one to break down some of those barriers, to facilitate, a different line of work if they're interested, and to help them journey, because there is a lot of pain really wrapped up in people living as transgender because of the history. And they come with all kinds of histories, all kinds of backgrounds in their past. So there's not really one definable story or one definable history in my experience of working with people, particularly when you're working with transgenders who are in prostitution. And so I do want to emphasize to people, anyone, please, if you're interested in learning more about getting involved or resources, or if you want to talk with Tina or me, we're happy to help. We do have things to offer. Even if you just want to talk with one of us and explore what does it look like, or have a bunch of questions. If you couldn't join us on this call today, then please get in touch. The links will be in the show notes below. And so I think we've been going, really over about half an hour now. And hopefully we've got lots of questions now. So we're going to, I'll cut off the video now. And if you are watching this on YouTube, please be in touch and learn about the next video. If you have any questions, please be in touch with me, and I will get you in touch with Tina. And I hope to see you on the next video. So here we go.